Let me say that it seems like there's no end to this, but perhaps in the course of all of this event, we might find a way to bring our police department together, and as we seek to bring the police department together, essentially hope that we can find ways to bring the community together. I think when I appointed Morris Redding police chief and George Napa police commissioner, I was very much aware of the fact that we had a police department that essentially had been divided along many different lines for a long, long time. I picked them because I thought they were the best qualified team to essentially perform the healing task of creating one department. I think we have really one major police department that's representative of at least 85% of our law enforcement officers. We probably have 10 or 15% that essentially are uncomfortable with that administration and that in a variety of ways have done things essentially through the press and through other agencies to undermine the work of the overwhelming department that runs the law enforcement of this city. I'd like to express my confidence that Morris Redding and George Napa are the best possible team that I could come up with right now to continue the job of building one police force that's 100% loyal and involved in fighting crime in our city, a corruption-free police department that essentially is going to secure the safety and security of all of the citizens of our city. The Julian Bond investigation, I think, is just another one of the many tensions that occur in a city such as this. And the present police department report evaluating that, as it has been partially released to the press, seems to indicate only what I've said all along, that we still do have some continuing problems in police. But overwhelmingly, those problems, I think, do not affect the overwhelming majority of the officers who are dutifully and loyally defending and protecting the laws and the citizens of this city.
Mayor, do you have any comments about, if we look at the portions of this report that have come out now, there seems to be a discrepancy between what Police Chief Morris Redding said in the beginning to reporters and also to city council members here about the transfer and what comes out of the report.
Well, let me say, I don't know that we have a discrepancy. I do know that Chief Redding considers his actions essentially routine. Now, one of the problems, I think, is that in personnel matters, police department does not discuss the reasons for doing things. All transfers are routine, but I would imagine, and I'm just guessing, I don't know, and the chief has not said this, that if he found that some officers were taking information to the press and outside the department before they took it to their superiors, there would be routine transfers of those kinds of officers. For the one thing you can do to upset an investigation is to see to it that the press has it before the people who have to make the decision about it have the information.
One of the apparent discrepancies is we were told in the beginning that the transfers were moving along before April 1st, long before it had nothing to do with the bond investigation. And according to Herman Griner's statements, he and Chief Redding were discussing it as late as April 1st, which seems to contradict the statement that we got earlier that it was in place long before that.
Well, there is a routine change of people in the police department, particularly in the intelligence division. And there's no question, I think the report also probably says that there were transfers already underway. Now, exactly what happened and how, I think you have to get the report. I'm not even sure that everything that the newspapers ran is, well, they certainly didn't run the full report.
Mayor, you say that Commissioner Knapp and Chief Redding, the best team you come up with now, does that suggest that you're thinking about replacing them?
No, it doesn't. It says that they essentially are struggling with a situation that has existed in some way, shape, or other as long as we've had a police force in this city.
Do
Do you still feel that the best course of action is basically no course of action in terms of the personnel involved here?
Well, what I said was, and I think it's very important that we understand how the police department leaked information pertaining to an investigation. It was obvious that that was a very complicated situation, and I said rather than go after people in a punitive fashion, the most important thing is to have a no-fault analysis of what really happened. Whether they did that or not is questionable, but the important thing is to have a police department that essentially has the trust of citizens so that citizens can bring information to that police department and believe that that information is going to be held in confidence.
The question was, do you still feel that there should be no punitive action as a
Well,
result?
my feeling is that punitive action, continuing trials and continuing hearings and things like that are not going to help us get to the bottom of the problem. My feeling is that we've got to find a way to establish a discipline and loyalty in the police force, and that's the primary task to which I hold the commissioner and the chief responsible. How they seek to do that is up to them.
At least one council member laid the blame at your feet, saying that the reason the police department is in this mess is because of the mayor's hands-off way of administering the public safety.
Well, the mayor ought to keep hands off of the administration of public safety. Every mayor ought to keep hands off the administration of public safety. There's nothing worse for public safety than a lot of political intervention. I try to stay in close touch with the commissioner and the chief, but I really don't dictate decisions to them, and neither do I interfere with their conducting the law enforcement of our city. And I think that's the responsibility of the mayor.
Can you tell us about a statement attributed to the chief? It was something like, make sure nothing happens to Andy or whatever. Is this, apparently this is something that the chief, is this a euphemism, or can you tell us?
Well, first of all, I think the chief denies having said that. And the chief knows that he has no need to, and I have no desire for him to give me any special protection. You guys have to remember that from 1962, my life was monitored by the FBI. Every time I left the country as part of the civil rights movement, I was accompanied by CIA officials. At the UN, I had not only the FBI, but the KGB and the DGI and everybody else. I mean, if I needed any protection, I needed it long before now. And if I've survived up to now without any political protection, I imagine I can make it from here on.
Would you characterize some of what's come out in all this as individual officers trying to, in essence, protect their own skins? Or how would you, there's so much conflicting,
Well,
he said, she said.
yeah, and I think one of the problems with this from the very, very beginning is that we have not ever been dealing with evidence. We've been dealing with rumor, gossip, and allegations. And unfortunately, a lot of that is continued in this report.
Is there anything in the report, you've read the entire report, is there anything in the internal affairs report that disturbs you about the police handling?
Well, there's a lot that disturbs me, but there's nothing that I don't know. The other thing is that I have been asked by our lawyers not to discuss the details of the report. And I assume that everything in the report either will be made public by the order of the court, or even if it's not made public, it will be dealt with appropriately within the confines of the police department.
Would you be in favor of the whole report being released rather than just portions of it like we got over the weekend?
Well, because so many of you guys got your information from contributors to the report, I don't trust you all to be unbiased in your reporting on the information if you got it all. Because there has been from the very beginning a tendency to protect the sources. The sources that you're protecting are the very sources that lied on me, and the very sources that leaked this to all over the place in the first place and created a scandal out of what really should have been a domestic dispute that was investigated within the confines of the Atlanta Police Department, the GBI, and the FBI.
If we had the report, we would know, and you would know, exactly what's in it, rather than it coming out piecemeal.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if nobody is punished, what do you think this would do for citizens participating, cooperating with police, and what would do for police morale if these guys can get away with this, book violation, and they can do it with impunity?
Well, first of all, I think you've got to realize that policemen live a very, very dangerous life. And you guys don't get fired every time you write an inaccurate story. You get corrected. And if they fired you every time you did an inaccurate story, we wouldn't have a news media. And I think the same thing is pretty much true of the police. That basically we are working with young men. We're trying to teach them about the Constitution. Here you've got on television now a lieutenant colonel in the Army that just doesn't understand what America is all about. We at least have some of the same problems within our police department. Men and women coming in, bringing with them prejudices and traditions of the past that are not part of the fabric of a progressive city moving forward in a democratic manner. And I think I leave that up to the chief and the commissioner to figure out how to discipline them and bring them along. I'd send them back to the academy, start over. But by and large, you've got some good guys and some good women. And the mistake that they made essentially was a civil mistake. It was not a criminal mistake. This was not, I don't think anybody took money for anything that they did. I don't think anybody's life was jeopardized. And policemen and women are in such life-threatening conversations constantly, where if they make a mistake, they pay for it as the two young men did, Biello and Williams. When I visit them and I see them laying there paralyzed and struggling back from very simple mistakes, it's hard for me to be totally judgmental against officers who daily risk their lives. And if I'm going to be, cracking down every time or insisting that anybody be fired for making any mistake, I think that's not the way I would propose to run an administration. I would respond to the chief and the commissioner, though, however they chose to work on this.
I make sure I understand you correctly. Are you saying that you did not, as I asked you earlier, you do not believe there's any discrepancies in the stories that we were told originally from Chief Morris and what is coming out now?
Well, let's put it this way. I think that would involve me in discussing the details of the report, and I don't know that Chief Redding really felt comfortable with the entire investigative process, and I would let the report speak for itself on that.
But did he tell us the truth, and did he tell city council members the truth when he first discussed it?
Well, what he has said is that as far as he's concerned, these are routine transfers. Now, there may be some discrepancy as to the definition of routine.
We also said it had nothing to do with the bond case.
Yeah.
And now it seems as of April 1st, he and Major Griner discussed the bond case.
Well, again,
One officer handled it.
you have one side of the story. That's one person's interpretation of what happened. Yes.
There are indications that Commissioner Napper knew intimate details of the investigation when he saw you in Tokyo.
Again, he did not mention anything to me at all about this in Tokyo, and I can testify to that. And the only other thing is that you have another officer saying that he told him some things, but I have not heard what Chief Napper has to say about that. Commissioner Napper. Okay, well, you all work that out with him.
You seem to be sure that the police released things to the media.
Yeah.
They all deny it.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Are you absolutely sure that they were the culprit, as you would call them in this case?
I think only you guys know that yourselves. And you don't reveal your sources, so it's very hard for me to tack that down. Anything I have to say, I try to say openly and above board. You know, and I don't have any other evidence.
Mayor, is there anything you feel you can do to try and ensure that other cases are not mishandled apparently in the same way that this one was apparently?
Well, let me say very clearly that there's no question that this was mishandled the way it was, essentially because of the high visibility of a number of people involved, especially me. And I am sure that the press would not even be interested in most of the kinds of information about neighborhood drug dealings, about that sort of thing that comes to our law enforcement community every day. And I would hope that our citizens would continue to bring information to our law enforcement community. We have invited them to bring it to the mayor's office, and I would see to it that it's investigated to protect them if they did not want their names known until such time as they were having to testify. But it's important that we have the total support of the community in fighting crime, and that's what I think is the objective of all of the investigations and all of the developments that come out of this
But
situation.
Anything that you can do to try to help eliminate some of these tensions which you feel contributed to this?
Well, we've been doing that now for 6 years, and the tensions continue to exist, but they will continue to exist. That they're human tensions in any human situation, and some of those will be differences of opinion, some of those will be differences in background, some of those will be racial, but that's part of what we have to work with. But it's part of what keeps our city going so well, in that we can openly and willingly deal with all of these complications and still come out functioning together as an efficient and effective operating unit.
Mayor, from the very beginning, from a management point of view, everything that we've heard about why these transfers took place, and I see it even more so in the internal report, is that we never had one clear, consistent, simple answer for why these transfers took place. There are so many different versions, so many different stories from so many different people. Does it leave you wondering why are there so many different stories if it was so routine and simple?
No, the reason is that there is in police policy a principle that you don't give an answer. And so people who know essentially have been advised by their attorneys not to discuss the details of personnel decisions.
Now, I realize that, but in terms of, we are told on one hand that Auburn and Hyde are transferred because they weren't doing their job. At the same time, we're told they were transferred because they've been there.
Well, you haven't been told that by people who made the transfers, though.
In some cases, yes.
Well,
But everybody involved from sergeant on up has a different version of it. Why is that?
because you've got a police department that right now lacks system and lacks discipline. And when people can go outside of the department and take the law into their own hands, and they do. And it's very much like, on a much smaller scale, Colonel North. That people are taking they're taking their case to the people independent of the authority.
When you say outside, you mean like going to the FBI?
No, like going to you.
Does it concern you that the officers went to the FBI?
Not going to the FBI as they went to in the normal chain of command. In fact, my prejudicial view is that when they went to the FBI said there isn't anything we can go with here. They hadn't had any evidence in this tape whatsoever that we don't already know or that we can document. There were no times, dates, and places. And I think because they couldn't get anything from the FBI in the way of serious investigation, they probably decided to take it to the press.
Do you know if Commissioner Napper approved the transfers that were authorized?
I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about the transfers. The only thing I know about the transfers, I've heard from the press and read in the press.
If a council member or more than one council member comes to you and says, Mayor, I think there should be a change at the top.
I think they should run for mayor in 2 years and change it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.